Okay, welcome back everyone. Today's topic is system technologies. But before we start and we wait for the final few to get in, remember the Google form for the feedback. Thanks for yesterday's feedback. I'll be sending it again today if you want to add there, because you'll see the topics are getting added at the end of the lesson. YouTube channel, you can go to African Teen Geeks, Snaplify, and Office 365. It's all on the home screen. You can see it there. And then education.gov.za for past papers. Okay, so today's topic, system technologies. And before we start with the system technologies, let's go to Class Dojo quickly. The people that's been here a while, there's your scores. And today is a good time to get some more points by answering questions and trying to make this a little bit more interactive. You can either apply privately or you can send it to everybody. It doesn't matter. Okay, so system technologies, that's a part of CAT that refers to the physical and non-physical components of a computer. So all the hardware and software and independent units which are designed to perform a particular function. So everything that helps the computer function as well. So this includes the hardware, peripherals, and software components. So this is a lot of the computer software as well as the hardware. Okay, so the function includes input, process, output, storage, communication. So it's the complete cycle and transfer data in an electronic format. Okay, so normally question 4, it's always question 4, and sometimes question 9 or question 10 has got this picture as well. So the information we're speaking about today is normally question 4, question 9, and question 10. Because it's overlapping, it might be in some of the other questions as well, but normally you'll get this table in one of those questions. Okay, so we're going to start working through this table and every single aspect of it. Some of them a little bit more in depth than others, and others we're just going to speak clearly. And I'll also give you some examples in the question papers, how it would have been asked, and I'll give you some time or a chance to answer some of those questions for me as well. Okay, so firstly, let's first look at computer A and computer B. So one is an i3 and one is an i7. Now we've spoken about the i previously. That's just the make. So i3 is just Intel, and normally the department uses i3s or i5s or i7s or Intels for you to compare with. They don't usually use other makes like AMD and so on. So it makes it easier for you guys. So the I is for Intel. And thank you for answering there, guys. It helps a lot there. So the I is for Intel, and then we'll go on. So we'll work through every single row of them, and then hopefully we'll understand this table a lot better. You can get better marks at that question. Okay, this question varies from 15 to 25 to 3 points or marks, but normally it's around there in the 20s. Okay, so the first one, we've got the i3 and the i5. So that's the make or the generation of the CPU. So I is Intel, and the 3 or the 5 or the 7 is the generation. So the 3 is the old one, and the higher it gets, it's the new one. Okay, so we don't only have we've got AMD and so on as well, but normally the department uses Intel. Okay, the CPU, okay, that's your central processing unit, and that's just an electronic circuit board with a computer that carries out instructions of the computer. Now at the right top there, we've got a i3 CPU, and that's how it normally looks like. Okay, so not always it's got the cover. Sometimes the cover is not so nice, or sometimes they've got even better ones. But that's basically, that's that small block, and that's basically the complete brain of your computer. That little piece of hardware controls most of everything. Okay, so then after the I and the 3 or the 7 or 5, you get to the 3.0 or the 1.7. Now that's the speed it works in. So that's the speed of the processor. So the G in the front is the size. So we'll go to gigabyte, or if it's an M, it's a little bit smaller, it's a megabyte. And some new computers are starting to get the T for a terabyte, but that's not so common. So most of the times we will be working with the G, because that's the most common. So that's a gigahertz. Okay, so what does it mean, the speed of the processor? It just shows you the clock rate and the clock speed. Okay, now normally they don't ask these two, but just for in case you'll maybe have a little bit of a better understanding. So clock rate is the instruction process speed of a computer measured in millions of cycles per second. Okay, so there's a clock rate, and your clock speed is a term used to measure the rate of the processor can complete processing cycle. So that's normally measured in megahertz or gigahertz, as I've said. So the clock speed is a little bit more important for us, and that's why we're trying to get a gigahertz instead of a megahertz, or 3.0 would be better than 1.7. Okay, so we'll go off to questions they've normally asked. So I've got two here, and let's work with the first one. You can give your answer in chat there. What speed of the processor is the specifications above? Okay, so we're on the left, we've got computer A, and right, we've got computer B. So what's the speed of the processor in the specifications above? If anyone can answer there, I'll get your question out there. Okay, so a terahertz is it's 3 zeros behind it, so it's more than this. So gigahertz has got this 1,000 there, so it just gets 3 zeros worth, so it's a lot quicker than we'd actually need. Okay, so the 1.7, A is 1.7 gigs, and B is 3 gigs. Okay, so well done there. So in your answer, you'd have said 1.7 gigahertz, and B, computer B, 3 gigahertz. Okay, and remember to add the GHZ for the gigahertz, so you'll get your complete mark there. Okay, second question, a name of the component in the specification that would influence the overall performance of the computer the most. Okay, so what would be the most important influence of your computer? Okay, well done there again. It's a CPU. So central processing unit helps a lot. And that's the biggest. The better your CPU are, the better your computer would be. And you'll have to do a lot to the other type of hardware or software to get it. The change, a single change on a CPU would have gotten you. Next, we're going to 4 gigabyte DDR3 and 8 gigabyte DDR3, and then we're also going to the 1333 megahertz and 1600 megahertz. Okay, so first of all, DDR, that stands for double data rate, and that's an updated version of memory. So it's basically a memory, and DDR is a double data rate, and the 3 or the 2, or if it's got nothing, or that's the version of it. Okay, so that's the third one. DDR3 is the third one for it. Okay, so that's the generation number it is. So DDR3 is generation 3. Okay, then the RAM is random access memory, and that forms part of memory that can be read and changed in any order. Okay, so that's your normal, typical used to store working data in a machine code. And random access memory devices allow data to be read and written. Okay, so a RAM would help a lot, but it's temporary. So that just holds the data and the program instructions of the computer while the CPU are working with it. Okay, so the 4 gigabyte is the size, and that's the size it can process. And the 8 gigabyte is the size as well. So 8 gigabyte would be better than the 4 gigabyte. And then the megahertz, we've spoken about the previous one, is the exact same. It's still the speed it uses. So it could have been changed to 1.3 gigahertz and 1.6 gigahertz as well. Okay, so there at the bottom is example of a RAM. If you've opened your computer box, that's how it would have looked. Laptop looks a little bit differently. It's a little bit bigger. That's why it's so much more expensive to upgrade a laptop than you would upgrade a computer or PC. Okay, there's a few questions there. They like asking questions about the RAM especially. So explain the function of the RAM of the computer. Now, I said there in the previous one, that's there for all your instructions, and it helps and holds the data in a program while your CPU is working with it. Okay, explain the difference between RAM and hard drive in terms of each function. Who can tell me the difference there between the two? Okay, a RAM, we said there's temporary, where a hard drive is permanent. So a RAM is used while you are working on your computer or your CPU, while your hard drive is storage. Okay, so that's where you go to save permanently. Okay, so you can change data the RAM, that's correct. And RAM, you're able to change the data. Hard drive is your storage. Okay, so what does the term violet mean? So if somebody says something is volatile, volatile means it can, if the electricity cuts out, you are standing a chance of losing all the data. So it's very sensitive, well done, and it can easily be changed or deleted. Okay, so it's especially when we've got a circuit break, we've got an electricity break, that's normally when the volatile means, or when you drop it, it could get easily, it could break and lose data. Okay, well done to those two as well. Okay, explain two ways in which RAM differs from SDD storage. Okay, now SDD is a solid state drive. It's fine, as long as you're here. Okay, so a RAM, a SDD is SD. So RAM is expensive per gigabyte, where your SSD is not that expensive. So per gigabyte, a RAM would cost you more. Okay. RAM is also temporary, where SSD is permanent. A CPU can contact the RAM or use the RAM directly. So a CPU and a RAM would work with each other, while the SSD is not directly working with your CPU, but is getting orders from the RAM basically. So the CPU gives the order to the RAM, and that uses storage there, the temporary storage. And while he's using that, he's giving the SSD storage instructions. Before, for example, if you want to save something, the CPU would tell the RAM you're busy saving, and that document or Word document you're using, it uses temporary space on the RAM. And as soon as you say save, it moves that space to the SSD, and it becomes permanent. Okay, and then other questions sometimes there. I think that was on the wrong place. Give a practical example for Arbor tags. We'll come back to the Arbor tag later. Just make a note. I accidentally added that one to the wrong slide. Okay, then we're going to the next one, and there we're going to the hard drive. So we're going to focus a little bit on the hard drive. And your hard drive, your HDD, is a large capacity storage device made of multiple disks housed in a rigid case. So on the left corner, the picture on the left, at the bottom there, that is how an HDD looks. Okay, so that's a hard drive. On the right side is a solid state drive, and it's a drive that has no moving parts, making it quieter. And if it's more quiet than a traditional one, so on the left side, the hard drive, it makes a little bit noise when you use it. And they store data electronically, where the original HDD uses magnetically stores magnetically. Okay, so it also takes a little bit longer to store than SSD would. So on the right side, the SSD is a lot better than the HDD. So again, at the top there, 500 gigabyte, that's the space available. And 1 terabyte's bigger than the gigabyte, and that's a little bit more. Okay, so there's the questions. So I give 2 reasons for using SSD rather than a traditional hard drive on a laptop for users. So firstly, SSD is faster. And that's most probably the only time when you'll say it costs more or less, or it's faster or slower, or it's easier to use or something. You'll always say in a practical or a theoretical paper, if you want to say faster, you have to say why is it faster or what is faster. So you're going to have to answer and say, for example, a SSD is faster than the traditional hard drive. Okay, by just saying the word faster, you won't always get your marks because you're not explaining why is it faster or what is faster. Okay, so SSD is also resistant to impact. Now, if we go back to the picture there, you can see why easily. So on the right side, it's built into a nice case, and it sort of looks similar to an external hard drive, but it is not the exact same. Okay, so SSDs, it's a little bit heavier as well. Where on the left side you see how the casing there looks. It's quite open, and there's a lot of parts there where the SSD, everything is closed nicely, and you can see it even looks modern. Okay, so if it falls, the left side one would break easily, the hard drive. Okay, and it uses less energy, so it generates less heat and it operates more quiet. And that's all the SSD. Okay, so whenever they wanted to compare a hard drive and SSD, the SSD wins the hard drive in every single aspect. Okay, then we're moving over to the graphics card. Now your graphics card, you get, first of all, what is the purpose of a graphics card? Okay, you can answer there. The purpose of a graphics card. And then while I'm waiting for you to answer the purpose, I'm quickly going to explain it to photos. So on the bottom left, we've got an integrated graphics card. And on the right, it's more of how a dedicated graphics card would look like. Okay, well done on those. Yes, that's exactly well done with those answers. Okay, so first of all, your graphics card helps you to see your monitor. Okay, so that's good there. Those little ports there allows you to see what's happening on your computer by your monitor. Okay, and it also helps for better resolution. That's good as well. So integrated 2 gigabyte hard drive means it's sharing its space. So it's sharing that 2 gigabyte with something else. Okay, with the 4 gigabyte dedicated graphics card, it doesn't share its gigabytes. So all 4 gigabyte is fully focused on showing your graphics. Where on the left side, that small one at the bottom, the integrated one, that's sharing with other components of the computer. So it's a circuit board that controls the output to display a screen. Okay, so you can see there easily there at the bottom, especially on the left-hand side. So there is it. And sometimes you get your CPU added there, or otherwise they've got other components there. Not all of them look exactly the same. Okay, so integrated graphics card, on the other hand, refers to a graphics system that is on the motherboard itself. It may have its own CPU, but not its own RAM. Okay, so it's got its own little CPU there as well, but not always its own RAM. So dedicated means it's got its own RAM, where integrated means it is sharing your other RAM that you've got on your system. Okay, so we've got that, and it shares RAM with the system RAM. Okay, so if I go back to the front there before we go on, if I've got an integrated 2 gigabyte, so then I am using some of this RAM as well. So while I am using the computer, I'm using 2 gigabyte RAM for my graphics card, as well as the 2 gigabytes that's left, you're going to have to use for running your program. So that's normally why you can't play games or open any video editing software or specific programs. We all know that some jobs require a better computer and not the normal computer, the normal table that you can just buy, and you have to have a specific or better computer, especially something using videos, or you have to show something, you use a dedicated one. Because this one, on the other hand, has got 4 gigabyte dedicated. So while you are using your graphics card, he's using his own 4 gigabyte. And that 8 gigabyte allows the computer to use on its own. So you don't share. So actually, you are using 12 gigabyte while you're running your computer, where computer A is only sharing 4 gigabyte, where your graphics card is already taking up 2 gigabyte there. So that's why sometimes your computer is slow, especially for when I do a split screen or something, because it is integrated, you struggle with it. Okay, so a dedicated graphics card refers to a separate graphics card and can be attached to your system's motherboard, and it's also like a mini board in itself. Okay, so it's got his own. If you take, that's why he's got fans as well, because it has his own RAM and stuff. You're gonna have to keep it cool as well. So that's why it's got some built-in fans as well. Okay, so this is more of a high-end graphics card would look like. And on the left is the integrated one we all get. So if you get a laptop or a basic desktop computer, you're most probably going to get the left-hand side. Okay, the 3 questions. That's going with the graphics card. Describe 2 hardware characteristics of an entry-level computer that could make them different from a high-end mechanic. So those are normally, if they say, what can I upgrade first to better my computer? So your answer would be RAM, because RAM, the better your RAM, the faster your computer can be. You can answer with a graphics card. If you've got a dedicated graphics card, speed will enhance as well as resolution. And then you can only say something like hard drive space, or that's the last thing. By adding a terabyte hard drive space and by adding 500 gigabyte hard drive space is not going to make a big difference. But by having a 4 gigabyte RAM and 8 gigabyte RAM is going to make a massive display or massive enhancement in speed and workability of your computer. Okay, state 2 possible disadvantages of having an integrated device such as a video adapter. Okay, we've spoken a lot about it now. So you can say anything about why. So you're gonna have, it's gonna be slower, your quality is not gonna be that good, processing speed's gonna go down, or anything like that would be, as long as it's 2 different things. So if you say, for example, it's gonna be slower, it would be correct, but you're going to have to say why is it slower to get a better mark. So it would be slow because you are sharing RAM and you don't have your own dedicated RAM, and your display would not be that great because you've got a 2 gigabyte instead of a 4 gigabyte, or it's integrated instead of dedicated, or so on. Okay, so teachers, especially CAT teachers, we want you to write more, but more sense. We don't want you to write one word. We know what you want to say, but if it gets to the end of the year and somebody else has to read yours, and especially if they don't know you like we do, they're going to say, okay, this guy doesn't have a clue, or this girl doesn't have a clue what they're saying, but actually you've got the whole concept. You're just getting used to writing one word. So rather write the proper full sentence explaining exactly what you want them to know. Okay, and thirdly, give one reason why it is an advantage for graphic card to have its own memory, and we've spoken about that already. Okay, so it's just to help display purpose, speed purpose. Okay, and then we get the USB. So both of them are lucky enough to have a USB 3.0. Okay, so universal serial bus, that's USB. So the 3.0 and a 2.0 and a normal USB, all that it says is the transfer rates. Okay, so I've got the USB 2.0 here and USB 3.0. So just by the example from jumping to a 2 to a 3, and I'm not sure what's a normal USB, 2.0 goes 480 megabytes per second, where USB 3.0 can go 4.8 gigabytes per second. Okay, so that's 10 times faster. Okay, so transferring data on a 3.0 would always beat the 2.0 because of its speed it can transfer. Okay, and then there's the question as well. Which item in the list of specifications would you use to connect a printer to computer A? And that would be a USB. So they are speaking about the complete list here. They're going about this complete list. So they ask there, what would you use to attach your printer there? So what can we use here? Firstly, USB we can use. That can attach a printer, as well as 802.11 ABG. Okay, who can remember what does that stand for? Okay, well done. 802.11, we've spoken about this earlier this week. That's Wi-Fi. So as soon as a device is enabled to do, and they've got this code on, they're just actually saying you are able to connect to a Wi-Fi network. Okay, so if your computer is Wi-Fi, has it got a Wi-Fi ability, you can connect it to your computer that has a Wi-Fi ability, and you can print over the Wi-Fi. Okay, so any of those two would work correctly for that specific question. Okay, then I've just added the rest of the list, because we're not going to go into detail about those. And we're firstly going to a multi-DVD driver or a multi-DVD writer. It just means it can write more than one at one stage. Okay, so sometimes a multi-DVD writer, you'll have two CD slots, or 3 CD slots, or 4 CD slots. And as for most people, DVD drives or optical drive or CD drive has become obsolete. What does it mean if I say the DVD drive or the CD drive has become obsolete? Okay, yes, it's useless, and the reason why it's useless is because more and more people are using external hard drives, or they're using a USB flash drive, and a DVD can't store as much as a flash drive can, and for long from now, it won't. So just the thing is, it gets easier. It takes up a lot of space. Firstly, so if you've got a laptop, for instance, it takes up a lot of space to have your optical drive installed on your laptop, where you could have had 4 or 5 USB drives, for instance. So the same space you would have had just for one CD, you can add space for 4 USBs, for instance. Okay, so a lot of developers is trying to do more with the space, so they're leaving it out completely. And we live in an age where everything's on the internet and you can download anything, so you can easily download something, and that would help you a lot. Okay, so if it's 802.11 ABG or the ABGN, second one, that's the exact same. It's Wi-Fi, and by adding an N, it just says it can connect to more devices. Okay, so the ABGN just states more devices and quicker speed, where the left one can also connect to Wi-Fi, but you won't be able to connect to so many devices than the other. Okay, thanks for that question as well. Okay, then we get to the display, and I've left the monitor and the touchscreen out. of doing on its own, because we've been doing that from grade 10. So the 19-inch or the 23-inch. Okay, if you can answer there, how does it be determined in a, how do you determine the 19-inch or if a screen is 23-inch? And then we've got an LCD monitor there as well and a touch screen. We'll get to the webcam we'll get back to the webcam. So just the monitor LCD is just the make, where if it says touchscreen, it just means you can do input with an input device, either your finger or a stylus, or you can type in it. So yes, it's diagonally from the left bottom to the top right, or top left to bottom right. So from one corner to the other corner diagonally. Okay, and obviously the bigger the inches, the bigger your screen would be. Okay, and then we've got the webcam. Now, not all computers, especially desktops, will come with a webcam, but normally, especially for laptops, they'll come with a webcam because a laptop is more built specifically for people going to work, and they are having the person at work in mind. So what do you want when you're going to work? You want to work on documents. You might want to do a meeting, so therefore you need a webcam, and that's why they give you an integrated webcam. Now, an integrated webcam normally has a 2 megabyte webcam, but sometimes, especially the bigger, or they call it also gaming laptops, they'll jump to an 8 megapixel webcam or so on. So it's just how good your quality of your web camera will be. It's determined by how high your megapixel is. The exact same like any photo or so on. That's the same with the webcam. Okay, and I've said it's not always integrated. So sometimes they'll say they're 2 megapixel integrated webcam, and sometimes otherwise they'll just leave it there, but it's still integrated. They don't always say it. Okay, unless they write in brackets there, it's not integrated, you'll have nothing to say about them. You'll just need to say that the 8 megapixel would give you a clear view than the left side. Okay, then we've got the operating system. Operating systems, we all know, they'll normally refer to Windows. So it's Windows 7 or Windows 8.1. And sometimes they will go to the other operating systems as well. Okay, and then right at the bottom, USB keyboard and a wireless keyboard. They normally will ask you there, what's the advantages of having a keyboard, a wireless keyboard, or what's the disadvantages of having a wireless keyboard? And exact same for the USB keyboard. And when I speak about the keyboard now, I'm referring to your mouse as well, because the advantages and disadvantages for wireless keyboards and mouses are exactly the same, and exactly the same for a USB keyboard against a wireless keyboard. Okay, so you can answer there for one disadvantage and one advantage of having a wireless keyboard. We'll see if you've got different ones. Okay, yes, for especially the wireless disadvantage should be you are using more batteries. So batteries are one of the biggest disadvantages. And yes, another disadvantage should be it can be stolen easily. It can be taken easily. That's two disadvantages for wireless devices. Advantages of wireless devices, you don't always are restricted to how long the cable is. So you can move a little bit away, 5 to 10 meters if you really want to. Especially now these days, people attach a wireless keyboard and mouse to their smart TV, and they can sit on the couch and they can use it as a computer, especially like going on YouTube or doing something like that. So that would be advantage as well. Another advantage I've got here, if you are in a computer lab or in a cubicle office where there's a lot of computers and keyboards close to each other, by having it wirelessly, sometimes they can cross signals. And before you know it, you could be working on the person next to you's computer instead of your own. Okay, that doesn't happen that often. but sometimes it does happen. Okay, then we're moving. Give two advantages of having this is past paper questions, others that I didn't cover now or wasn't covered in the picture. So the first one we've had was the Harvard one. So I'm quickly going to jump back to because I've copied it on the wrong one. Okay. So give a practical example of where Harvard tags are used. Okay, so first, what does Harvard stand for? RVID. What does that acronym stand for? Okay, so Harvard, it stands for a radio frequency identifier. So it's used for, why would you use it? Normally it's been used in shops. Yes, radio frequency identification. And normally it would be used in shops. And if you think quickly and you think of a music shop, for example, Musica and so on, they use those tags quite often. And sometimes, yes, it can become on credit cards as well. And sometimes people use it for, especially Pick and Pay and so on. Those shops, they put it on their baby products because it's quite pricey. They just want to see if somebody steals it. So they're either using it for you to walk, and as soon as you walk out the door, it takes an alarm and it shows it's stolen. And sometimes they often use it at other shops as well, clothing stores and so on. And it just helps people to know if it's stolen, or you can also add stuff to it, for example, money. So they are thinking of going into the future for everybody installing a little chip inside of them, and they would use this Arvid tag or radio frequency identification for you to walk around. Now, I don't know if you've seen this a lot sometimes in movies. You walk around and they pay with their risk or they enter stuff with it. Now, that's what they are thinking of doing, especially now. So that would where all of it would be used. Okay, so give two advantages of using a HDMI technology instead of VGA. Now, this question gets asked a lot of the times. Okay, so HDMI is a newer connection method to display something than a VGA does. So that's the first one. So it's better display. But what makes the HDMI even better is it supports sound as well. Okay, so you can with an HDMI show picture as well as sound, where a VGA can only do picture. So here's an answer as well. An HDMI cable supports HD video and sends both audio and video at the same port, and that's correctly there. And it's easier to obtain and more reliable compared to a VGA. Okay, so sometimes a VGA has got those things you need to screw in. That's the normal old blue, normally has a blue cable there that you connect in the back of your computer. So that's the old connection where the HDMI is better. So firstly, it's faster. It's faster because it can transfer a lot faster, and that's why it can get a HD capability. And secondly, it can also transfer sound where a VGA can't. Okay, name two valuable types of information of a point of sale system provides store owners. Now, why would you want to have a point of sale at your store? Now, point of sale is basically a database. Now, that's where you're learning about the database, and the backbone of a point of sale is a database. So everything in your shop, if we look at a grocery store, they'll have all the groceries there in the database. They'll take stock take, and everything that gets in will be loaded onto the database. Everything that's sold gets removed off the database via the person standing at the counter and scanning everything that's passing. So if she scans the bread and the milk, it gets minused on the database. And the person at the back where deliveries are, if they bring a box of milk, it adds a box of milk to the stock. So that especially helps with stock take. So back in the day, once a week, once a month, everybody had to count everything and had to count the entire store. and they would have sometimes even closed the store for the whole day so people can count, or they required their staff to work from 8 at night to 2 in the morning to count. And that was reliable, but it wasn't as reliable as a point of sale system. Okay, so sometimes they still do hard stock takes by doing manually counting it. But by having the point of sale, you will always know how many of what you've got in your store, and you can set yourself queries and so on to get information, and also allows you to be warned. For example, if they warn you, if there's less than 10 of something, it sends you notification and you automatically know. And if a price is increased of something, you don't have to go there. And back in the day, they had this price tag and they had to put it on every single one. Now they just change the price on point of sale. So, for example, you could have gotten the bread on the in the store, and by the time you get in front, the price could have increased. For example, that's how easy and how quick point of sale works. That's just a satellite cable. I presume they call. I'm not actually sure 100% what it is. I'll check it up for you now. Okay, so the last one there, what kind of desktop computer is a result of convergence? Now that's an all-in-one computer, and that just means the term convergence means you can do multiple stuff on at once. For example, the best example, if I ever want you to give an example of convergence, you need to say a smartphone. Okay, so don't say cell phone, because you get those old 3310s. That doesn't do anything. And there's still some of those black and white phones in the market. But if speaking about convergence, always say smartphone. So by saying a smartphone, or even yes, a smart TV would work as well. It You can send emails, you can do video calls, you can have interviews, you can write or edit documents, you can play games on it, you can listen music to it. So everything that always needed a dedicated device, you have got in your pocket if you've got, for example, a smartphone or a smart TV and so on. Okay, so always get yourself some basic examples, learn those basic examples, and if you know convergence is a cell phone, you can work from there and say it can go on. Okay, so getting to the end of the lesson now. So for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we are going a little bit of HTML. And we're going for bookmarks and hyperlinks, and then we'll do some solution development theory. I've seen there was a few people that said they want to have solution development as a to help with. So we're going to that, and HTML as well. So HTML is quite nice, and I can't seem to find the link now. Okay, so if you've got anything you want to add to those lists for next week, tomorrow I'll paste the link again for the Google form, and you can add something for next week's list. Okay, but for now we're doing HTML, and we're going to do a little bit of Word. Okay, so you guys can have a great day. Remember to stay safe, and thank you for being here. Thank you for giving your time, and thank you for being so interactive. Desktop computers, yes, it can be, but it's not the best example for convergence. Okay, think of something that's portable. A laptop could be even used, but the desktop computer, I would mark it correctly, but not everybody would be so lenient. But you can have an argument for a desktop computer. Okay, so thank you guys. Have a nice day, and I'll see you tomorrow too.